Okay, Module 2, we're going to move on to talking about starting your lit review. The first thing that you need to do is you have to pick a topic. You have to decide on something that you're interested in. In theory, you're starting something now that will be finished later. A lit review is designed to be the basis for a research project. Some people take applied research, some people don't. We still work with the assumption that you need to be able to take information from different sources and craft a review of that information that's a critical analysis of that literature. Um, One of the things that you need to keep in mind is if you're going to conduct a research investigation, if you ever do that, that you're not setting out to prove anything. We're setting out to investigate what may or may not be true about a given question that you want to ask. Um, to set out to prove something, the problem with that is that you become biased in thinking that you already know what the answer is. You're looking for the evidence to support that. That's not good research. Good research develops a question, understands the basis for that question, what we already know about the information related to it, and then we try to investigate what may be true about that. We need to begin with a general topic and then narrow to a specific question. That's what you're going to work on here very early on in the class. It says something in here about doing this in groups of 3 or 4, so we will have a discussion thread associated with this so that you can kind of narrow down your question. And it needs to be a very specific type of question that has what's called an independent variable and dependent variable. What if impact does one variable have on another? What is the difference between two things? That kind of thing. You need to pick something that's related to your field. If you're in counseling, try to pick something in counseling. If you're in training and development, try to pick something in training and development, because you're going to have to do less work trying to find information because you're already going to be familiar with the concept. If you are in training and development, but you have a child with dyslexia and you're just interested in doing that, well, that might be interesting to you, but there's a lot of background information that you're going to have to become established with to be able to do something like that. So try to keep this something that's pretty close to your field that you're familiar with. The specificity of the question is really necessary in being able to find the data that you want. The best place to do this is through something called academic search in the library. And when you're in D2L, up in the top hand part of the page, when you log in, there's a tab for the library. If you click that, it'll take you directly to the library. And generally what we want to be able to do is to find, close this down, is to find primary sources. We want primary sources. We want primary sources that are no more than 5 to 8 years old, unless it's some kind of landmark or classic study. We want primary sources because if we use something like a secondary source or a tertiary source, what that means is when you use a secondary source, for example, if you use a lit review from somebody else's study as the basis for your lit review, then you're making an assumption that the person who's doing the analysis associated with that lit review, that's reviewing the primary articles that led to that lit review, that person knew what they were talking about. And what you're hopefully going to see through the end of this course is that's not always true. Sometimes people don't know what they're talking about. So let's look at being able to find a topic. When you're on the Midwestern main page, you want to go to the databases. And at least for those of us that are in education, we tend to go through this search tab called Academic Search Complete. Things that we want to limit ourselves to. We do want full text articles. We want peer-reviewed journals. We want evidence that is our research that's based in some kind of formal process. A lot of the things that you'll come across, there is no data to support what it is that the author is trying to say. So let's say that we're interested in doing something about human resources and online training. When I do that, I get several articles. I get 540 articles. Remember, we wanted the full text. We wanted the peer-reviewed journals. The reason we want full text is we really don't have time to wait on them to find the information that we need. The other thing that we want to do is we want to narrow the band by which we are searching. So we're going to shore this up just a little bit to about 2005. It's going to adjust for that. Now it's down to 434 articles. So that's still too many articles. So we want to narrow this down. Well, what do we mean by human resources? How about factory productivity and online training? We do that, we get too narrow. So sometimes we have to back out of something like that. So how about personnel development and online training? Now we're starting to get somewhere. So let's pick this article just as an example. We want to see the full text. If you get stuck trying to find articles that you need, then one of the ways to get around that, you can see where this is from. So if you go to the end of the article, of course this one's not going to have it. It kind of does. You can see the references that they use. Sometimes that's a good way to go find other articles that you're looking for. The other thing that you can do is there's a button over here that says find similar results, and it will take these descriptors and it will go find more articles. Okay, now we have 4.4 million articles, but look at all the information that it used to try to gather those articles out. So there's some tricks to being able to do this. But going back, what you need to do is you got to pick something that's reasonable. There's an old saying that goes, the purpose of this course is learn a research process and complete it from beginning to end. Save the world later, save yourself right now. You need to pick something that's reasonable, something that's doable, that you can get done in the amount of time that we have available. The purpose of this, on the surface looks like it's to write a lit review, but it really is trying to teach you how to analyze research articles, be critical of the data that you're looking at, the information that's available to you, and trying to make an interpretation about whether or not it's worth using as a part of your argument in the research that you want to conduct. This is supposed to be a synthesis of what we know about a topic, not a review of researchers. And what that means is this is supposed to be information that you're taking from a lot of different sources, and you're compiling all this information to be able to make a reasonable argument about something, or to help us understand what we know about it. And when you look at the articles, you need to be able to look at the methodology by which they derive the results. And it's one thing for authors to provide results, it's a whole nother to say whether or not those results are based upon good quality research. For example, we've already talked a little bit about correlations. If you read a research article and somebody has used correlations and produced results based upon those correlations, but when you read it, you discover that they've used the wrong correlation methods or the wrong types of correlations, then although their results may be significant, there's a place for you to make a question about whether or not that is necessarily valid. That doesn't mean it's good research. That doesn't mean that it's not something that you can use. What we want you to be able to do is to read that and say, although this may be true, there are some flaws in the way that the research is designed, so it may not be. What we don't want to get in a habit of doing, and this is the hardest thing for students to stop, is to get in a situation where they have a paragraph that says in a study this, and another paragraph where it says in a study this. This is not just about the research studies. We do not want one paragraph after another of synthesis of information. We want you to take information from lots of sources and rewrite it in your own words. That's very hard to do, and it's something that we're going to have to practice on throughout this course to try to get you better at doing it. Research studies are more valuable than opinions. I'll give an example of where that is happening. In bilingual education, we've seen a lack of empirical evidence for quite a while. Now, that's certainly starting to change, but a lot of the articles that are associated with what we know about bilingual education was not based upon any empirical research. It was based upon experiences or things like that, but there was never any empirical research behind that. When you write your literature review, you need to make a case for why your topic is valuable. Be very specific. Tell us what you know about your topic or what is known about the topic. And if you have parts to your question, which you likely will, you need to explain the value of each of those parts. For example, if you're going to do, and this is a topic that I had one time, if you're going to write about sense of belonging in middle school, you need to describe what sense of belonging is. And then you need to talk about how sense of belonging may be related to middle schools in terms of achievement or in terms of how connected kids feel to their school. The document that I put in Module 2 as the format for a lit review gives an example of how that needs to happen. There needs to be an introduction, and then you need to be able to explain the pieces for that. If you have inconsistent results, if you have one research article that reveals one thing and another research article that reveals something else, then it's okay to use both those. Say, although this author may have found this based upon this methodology, another author found something different, but that author used a different methodology. And what you may discover is neither one of them is right. And I want to reiterate, just because something is written in an article and it's published through a peer-reviewed journal, that does not mean that it's right. What you need to be able to do is analyze it and make an argument for inconsistent results. There is an example of a lit review provided to you. There's a couple of different ones. One of them we're going to do a discussion thread with, and the other one is a paper that a student wrote very recently in this course, and that really is just a guide to help you understand exactly what this is supposed to look like, because for most people, they've written papers before in a class, but they never tried to write a lit review where they are trying to create an argument and make sure that they are analyzing literature and incorporating that in such a way that it doesn't sound like just one summary paragraph after another. So we'll continue to work on this. There's a couple of discussion threads that'll be associated with this. One has to do with narrowing your research topic, and the other one has to do with this right here, with being able to look at a lit review and ask some questions about that.